are happening with the food bank. Next year, next April, we will celebrate our 40th anniversary as an organization. And it's really a big achievement to be able to say we've done that, but the daunting task for us remains. There are so many people who are dealing with hunger and food insecurity in our area that it's a real challenge. In Louisiana, we are #1 in food insecurity for children and seniors. Okay? That's the two ends of the continuum who are least able to take care of themselves, least able to do something about the fact that they're food insecure. So it's key for us to make sure that we can extend our efforts and reach out farther and have more impact. When you start talking about that, you have to look at the many things we've done over the years and how dependent we've been on our community for what we've been able to accomplish. And you realize, most people think of us as the Baton Rouge Food Bank, but we are really the greater Baton Rouge Food Bank. We're the 11 parishes that surround and include East Baton Rouge Parish. So if you start over in St. Helena, go through both Felicianas over to Point Capee, down to Iberville, all the way down to Assumption, come back up through St. James, Ascension, Livingston, and East and West Baton Rouge. And that's the service area where we try to make a difference. We do that through over 125 agencies. And the agencies that we work through are generally what most people think of as a food bank, but they're basically the pantry at church. And some of the other organizations we work with are some shelters and some outreach programs. So the key for us is we're dependent on those agencies and those people to make the distributions to the people in need. We in Baton Rouge proper cannot know who's in need and who isn't in these communities, whereas the people that are on the ground there can. They are facing some new challenges in that we are facing an age problem. So many of these agencies that we work through are seniors are the key to their volunteer efforts. And many people are aging out of being able to support those agencies. So we're having to look to find new ways to partner with other agencies or bring several churches and pantries together to be able to continue our mission. That's a challenge. We have in the past, and we continue to do that at this point, continued to provide mobile distributions to help fill the pockets where those agencies go away. We want to make sure that the people we're helping are still receiving the assistance they need to be able to be food insecure and be able to know that they're going to have a meal for their next meal and not be afraid of whether they will be able to have a meal at any point during the day. And food insecurity, it's sort of a different terminology than what we've been traditionally used to. Traditionally it's been hunger. Well, food insecurity is the issue of people not having food to have 3 meals a day. They do not have enough food or enough funds to be able to have 3 meals a day. That has become more pronounced in the past couple of years because of inflation. We all see what the price of food is. We see what's been happening. We're all facing it as we go to the grocery. And we face it as an organization also as we try to acquire food. But the individuals we serve and assist are in the worst case situation of being able to cover additional food costs, additional gasoline costs, any additional costs that they're going to face in housing or other things. So it's more imperative, and we're seeing people, as a result of this, people that were no longer in the line of needing assistance from us, who are now stepping back into the line and coming back to us for help because they can't make it on what they were able to make to get out of the line. Because the cost of food, the cost of gasoline, the cost of everything has gone up so dramatically that it's a real challenge for them to be able to put food on the table. When you start looking at that, and you start looking at how many meals we need to find, we're looking at 20 million meals is the gap for our service area. So we need 20 million more meals than what we're already providing, and then what I like to call it the alphabet soup of federal feeding programs. From TFAB to CACFP to CSFP to WIC to all the programs that they use the acronyms and the initials for, don't do it. And we can't do it. So we're trying to find ways that we can bite in and eat into that difference, that meal gap, to start filling it because it's so key for people. When you start looking at the children that we spoke of earlier, children are the most important from the standpoint of feeding. If they do not have food, they go to school hungry, they go with a headache, they are not there. They may be actually at school, but they're not there mentally because they're distracted by their stomach, their head, whatever it may be. Absenteeism is up because of the hunger. So and behavior problems also are a challenge. So we're striving to provide different avenues to have kids have food for the weekend. We have a backpack program that provides food for children throughout the 11 parish area to make sure that they have food for the weekend so that they can come back to school fed and make sure that they will come to school be able to learn. And that's key for their future. We're also seeing so many more seniors who are potentially in the line of needing assistance from us who are raising their grandchildren. No fault of their own, but now they're being forced to raise their grandchildren and provide food for their grandchildren on top of trying to find food for themselves. It's a major issue. And it's something that we've got to face as a country, because if we don't feed our children and educate them, we're going to continue to have this problem for generations to come. Now, a little more about the food bank. When I started at the food bank, we were in a 29,000 square foot facility on Choctaw. And we were pushing about just under, right around 5 million meals a year. In 2013, we were able to move into a 152,000 square foot facility, which allowed us to actually accelerate our expansion. We were very grateful to the Albert Frankel family because we were able to buy that building from Frankel Furniture Company, which was an employee-owned company. But then the two additions that they'd done to the building were both in Frankel family trusts. And the Frankel family donated those two buildings to us. So we could get a 152,000 square foot facility for what we were looking at paying for a 50,000 square foot facility. So it gave us the opportunity to really transform and visualize a future for the organization. As a part of that transformation, we were able to speak with Ron Zappi, who was then the CEO of Zapp's Potato Chips. And Ron had a vision for us to be able to do bulk packaging of product to reduce the cost for us to be able to acquire rice and beans and cereal and other things that we could use through a packing machine. And his vision was to provide us one of his packing machines from the little chippery in Gramercy. Well, subsequently Ron got sick and passed away, but the family, when they sold the company to us, stepped up in a big way, along with the Charlie Lamar Foundation, to fund the piece of equipment for us to have a bulk packaging operation. And it is basically the same piece of equipment that you would see in the little chippery at Gramercy to pack the Zapp's potato chips. And we use it to take bulk palletized bags of rice, beans, cereal, and other products that we can put through the machine to take those bulk palletized bags and pack them into individual distribution bags or retail size bags. And we can do that at a lower cost than us going out and buying the rice or the beans themselves in pre-packed individual distribution bags. So it gives us a tremendous opportunity. We have just expanded that to a second machine. So now we have 2 machines to be able to double our production. We have been packing rice for the other food banks in the state of Louisiana, and we will be packing rice for other food banks across the country. It gives us an opportunity to have an impact and make a difference nationally. And we are the only food bank in the country that has this type of bulk packaging equipment, and we're recognized nationally by Feeding America, the National Food Bank Organization, for having that. Some of the other things that we've done to expand our operation are we've taken on some new programs. I mentioned the backpack program. We also have taken on the summer feeding and after-school feeding programs. So we do some after-school feeding in the Gardere area especially. We do summer feeding throughout some of the rural areas to try to make sure kids are being fed when they no longer receive their free or reduced lunch because they're out of school for the summer. We also have just taken over the CSFP program, which is the senior feeding program for our service area. And that allows us to provide a 40-pound box of food every month to seniors in our service area. And that's a key opportunity for us to expand our service to seniors with the issue of senior food insecurity being so great in the state. Some of the other things we really do, we have a nutrition area that focuses on educating people about using their SNAP dollars to the best benefit of their health. So we have basically a SNAP education program. We also take that program and we do it with children because they can have an impact in their homes by understanding nutrition. And we turn them on to things that they may never have eaten, like a mango, for example, and show them how good broccoli can be and really invite them to explore the nutritional food that's out there. So it's really about trying to educate the people, because in the long run, the more we can educate to make good choices about healthy food, the better we are as a state, because when you start looking at Medicaid, the long-term impact of what we're doing from a standpoint of diet in the state or lack of food directly impacts the cost of health care on the back end. When you look at the amount of obesity, hypertension, diabetes in this state, especially in the Medicaid area, that's key for us to really, address it on the front end before we get into a situation where we're just having to try to medicate it on the back end. So we're trying to focus on educating people at the early ages so that they will make those wise choices and not have to deal with obesity, diabetes, hypertension in their later life. We have an obesity problem in children, trying to do the same thing with a nutritional program to feed kids and to teach kids about making wise choices. Beyond that, we do a lot of outreach. We are constantly doing outreach to raise money, to raise food, and our communities have always rallied around us. And this is the time of year when people think about the food bank. They think about how thankful they are for their situation. They think about how fortunate they are. They think about family and giving back. So when you start seeing us in the fall, that's when we're doing our big push for our fundraising and food raising to carry us through after the first of the year. And food banking is very seasonal. It's got a real seasonal flair. It's not as much in some other parts of the country, but in Louisiana, there's a definite seasonal flair to it. When you start out early in January, you see things, you're just trying to get through with what you were able to raise at the end of the previous year. Then you get to Lent, and the Lenten period gives you a little bump. And you start seeing more food donations and people starting to have food drives to try to make a difference. You see more people give a little more money because they're so trying to give alms, etc. So we see that. And then we go to the summer and everything drops off again because everybody's off thinking about vacation and what to do with the kids and how are we going to entertain the kids, and we're not top of mind. But then when you get to September and the kids get back in school, the schools start having their food drives, and it starts building back up. And then we get through the holidays, and the holidays are the big push. And the big push for us is these holidays because that's when we raise the majority of our money and the majority of our food. And if you look at that seasonality, that's got to pretty much bridge us for the months leading up to Lent and pretty much through Lent and the summer. So what we're trying to do is raise more awareness in those off months, if you will, when people aren't thinking about us, in January, February, March, April, and then the summertime, because that's key for us to be able to continue to serve during those periods. We've been very blessed with people who have donated to us. We've been blessed with people who have left us money and bequests, but it's never enough. Because the challenge is for us to be able to have a sustainable organization that we can continue to move forward in and find new ways to address the issue of food insecurity and hunger while trying to maintain the levels of what we're doing now. You start looking at the differences in food banking from when I started. When I started in food banking, it was a tractor trailer load of reclamation product that would pull up from a grocery store warehouse, and you would have a bunch of canned goods, and you'd have to go through and sort it, and that was the food you'd have to distribute. There was no produce. There was no protein. It was just canned goods, and it was pretty much canned fruits and vegetables. Then we started seeing the change, and we started looking at things that we needed to do. when we moved into the food bank facility, we built a freezer and a cooler. But we built them both to freezer spec. Why? Why would you build two things, a freezer and a refrigerator, to freezer specifications? Because we fully anticipated that at some point down the road, we were going to need to have more refrigeration capability and more freezer capability. So in 2020, we were very fortunate in that we were able to install a new cooler and convert the existing refrigerator / cooler into a freezer. You know, and to do that, to do a freezer in Louisiana, you have to insulate the floor, you have to protect the foundation, because if you just put a freezer on top of a foundation in South Louisiana and don't have the floor insulated, the foundation is going to crack. It's just a fact. So by doing that, we were able to make that easy change and expand and double our freezer capacity while doubling our cooler capacity by putting up a box, a refrigerator box on the back end of our freezer and cooler. So those are the types of things that have presented us with the opportunities. It was perfect timing because of COVID. We started seeing all these fresh products coming in, all dairy and other things that were coming in from the federal government, the trade mitigation products that were coming in. So we were able to take care and handle those products at levels that we would not have been able to do otherwise. So it was just, the stars were aligned for us to be able to have that in place when we moved on to the new cooler and the doubling of our cooler and freezer capacity. When you start thinking about those types of things, that's when we really started changing our nutritional focus. Those canned goods that we used to see come from the grocery stores weren't coming at the same levels anymore. We had to adapt and be able to acquire and provide more nutritional food from other sources. The biggest shift in that meant we had to go buy more food. And our purchase budget continues to increase. We've been able to take advantage of some federal programs recently with the local farm effort, and we've been able to get some product from local farmers, distressed farmers, and be able to help them develop their farms into an opportunity where they can be more successful. They can potentially buy crop insurance and other things that they wouldn't be able to face otherwise. They would not be able to fund. So it's a great opportunity for us to get more produce, but it's also a great opportunity for farmers to be more successful. And that's key for us because we don't have a significant number of farmers in our service area. Basically what you see in our service area are soybeans and sugarcane. We're not a large citrus area. We're not a large sweet potato area. Those are the two main crops, and that's part of the problem for us is we do not have significant numbers of farmers that generate significant amounts of produce for us. So we're having to buy produce from co-ops across the southeast and southwest to bring tractor-trailer loads of produce in here. And we always talk about our ability to generate 3 meals for every dollar we receive. And the way we're able to do that is we can get national donations of those canned goods and other things into Baton Rouge because they're a donation, they're free, but we have to pay the transportation to get them here. We used to be able to do 7 meals for $1, but the fact that we're having to purchase more food, the fact that transportation costs have gone up dramatically, and those opportunities are much more limited than they used to be because national donors have really tightened up on their inventory controls and their production controls to minimize the amount of inventory they carry and the amount of excess inventory. I don't know if you've been to the grocery store lately, but you look around, if you look at the lines of food that we used to have before COVID, and you look at the different lines and the different options that you have today, they're much more limited. And that's a real factor in the amount of donations that grocery stores and others can give us for products that are approaching the best buy date. And that's what we take advantage of is products that approach the best buy date. They're still good for months after that best buy date, but nobody wants to buy it when it's past the best buy date. It's not an expiration date, it's still good product. It just at that date, the manufacturer indicates that from that date on, it will begin to deteriorate in its highest quality. So it won't be the highest quality that they've been selling, that they would sell you. So it begins to lessen its quality, it begins to become less attractive, it becomes less nutritious until it reaches an expiration date where you no longer can consume it or should consume it and need to throw that away. but it's still good product. It's sort of like what we buy in produce. We focus on our produce purchases. We buy a lot of what they call seconds. And a second is every bit as nutritious as the first. The difference between a first and a second is, how does it look? Does it meet the quality vision of what the grocery store wants to sell you? So it may be a little deformed, it may be a little discolored, but it's every bit as nutritious, every bit as good. So we can get those products for less cost than having to buy fresh A1, number one products to allow us to take advantage of those savings and allow that fruit and those vegetables to not go to waste. For example, we've had produce come in that has come to our doors and been shipped to us from other local providers. Okay, and when it came into them, cabbage, for example, the leaves on the outside of the cabbage were yellow. Well, they weren't going to pay for yellow leaf cabbage that they're going to lose, take a lot of it, they're going to have to tear off to be able to get to the green cabbage that they can sell. So they rejected that load. And when they reject it, they send it to us. We have volunteers that'll take those leaves off. And since we don't have to pay for that product, those volunteers will take care of it, and we'll take that product and distribute it, and it'll look brand new by the time our volunteers take those yellow leaves off. So we're still salvaging. You know, the food bank started as a food rescue organization, and we're still doing that. That's a main function of what we do. But we are dependent on our volunteers to be able to do that. We had the equivalent of 27 full-time employees from our volunteers last year. We can't do what we do and hire 27 more people. So we are totally dependent on three things to be successful, volunteers being a major piece of that. We need money, we need food, and we need volunteers. That's the old proverbial three-legged stool, and if you lose any one of those three legs, that stool's not going to stand. So that's our dependency, is those three things to be able to be successful. You know, we still have to keep the lights on, so we need money. We need food, naturally, because that's what we distribute, that's who we are, that's what we do. And then we need volunteers, because we can't do the big piece of the food without the volunteers. And over the 40 years of the food bank, we've had some interesting experiences. You know, we were in Hurricane Katrina. We were in that 29,000 square foot facility, and we pushed 4 times the amount of product in 1 month than we normally push through that facility. So you would see the aisles, the racks would be full, the aisles would be full, stacked 3 high of product, and then you'd come in the next day and everything was empty. So it was just one of those that it would pulse like that, and we just kept giving out food for as long as we possibly could. And we kept being resupplied. It's sort of like the old movie, the old Cary Grant movie, The Bishop's Wife, where he sets up the gentleman with the wine, and the wine bottle keeps refilling automatically. That's how we felt during Katrina. And then in 2016, we had our own little excitement with the flood, where we had 4 feet of water in the facility, took all of our moving equipment offline, took our forklifts offline, but we were able to get back to about 70% of our capacity within 4 days. So we were able to make significant impact and changes on the fly, if you will, to be able to do that. We were back in the warehouse within 4 weeks, and we were in temporary housing outside the warehouse to be able to continue to do our job, and we were back online as quickly as we could possibly get. So it's one of the real things that people don't realize is that the food bank is a business. We are run like a business, just like any other business. We're a $30 million business in this community. And most people don't, they think of the local food pantry, the pantry at church, and that's what they consider a food bank. But this is not that sort of food bank. With what we do with bulk packaging, with our inventory controls where we're using barcoding, we are every bit a big, major corporate warehouse that you would see anyplace else. And when I started at the food bank, I really envisioned, we were very soft and fuzzy about feelings. When I first started there, that was the feel of the organization. And what we've tried to do is change it to where we are a corporation, and we have a bottom line just like every other corporation. The only difference is our bottom line is how many people do we feed, not our net income. So it's really still about the mission, and it's totally mission focused, but it's run as a business to make sure we are taking advantage and fully utilizing and honoring every dollar that a donor gives us. And that's key for us to make sure that every donor knows that every dollar we get, we're going to do the best we can to maximize the amount of food that we can distribute to accomplish our mission. And that's the key. I mean, that's who we are. That's what we do. We collect food. We distribute food. We don't try to be anything fancy. We're not in the kitchen business at this point. We are not in the business of trying to change the world, because we're in a position of, we're in a fight. And the challenge for us is to be able to meet the fight that's presented to us. If we could change the world, we would. But long term, we're going to have to change the educational system. We're going to have to change the way we talk about things and look at things. And we have to change our priorities into whether we're going to make sure that people are fed, or whether we're just going to keep with the struggle and let things go the way they are and people continue to fight. So with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions anybody has. And
you mentioned that you're, I think, 20 million more meals than what we're writing. Is that on an annual basis?
Yeah, it's the 20 million meal gap to make sure that everyone is not food insecure in our service area on an annual basis.
So how many are you providing? I mean,
we are providing, last year we provided right at 13 million meals. And you have to remember, you still have all those federal feeding programs that are doing SNAP and other things that are doing so much more than we can, but we're still not getting there. Yes, sir.
Have you thought about, we read a lot about food deserts. Have you thought about partnering with Pennington to establish nutrition centers featuring their DASH diet and offering nutrition counseling and cooking and a whole gamut of services to these areas?
The question was about food deserts and whether we've looked at partnering with Pennington. We do a lot of things with Pennington. We're in an alliance to end hunger that has some Pennington representation, as well as LSU healthcare system. So we're trying to find ways to do that. A lot of it is funding and our ability to be able to get the funds to be able to go into food deserts. Food deserts are a major problem in our entire service area, especially more so much in the rural areas, because in the urban areas, you can still get to a store. It's a little more of a trek. But in some of the rural areas, there's one store in the entire parish, one real grocery store. And that's the challenge. So that's why we do a lot of those mobile food distributions and other things to try to introduce produce into those communities. But the real challenge is our ability to be able to have the funds to be able to do these things and to do the education and bring the food where it needs to go, because food deserts are a fact, and we've even looked at doing a nonprofit grocery store in some of the areas. The problem is it's got to be so small and so focused. It's the question of the turnover of produce and other things. Can you sustain it? And that's why you've seen grocery stores go away, because of the problems in those areas and the lack of support as people have moved away. Yes, sir. We are serving roughly, on a monthly basis, it's about 50,000 people. And that's not where we need to be. We need to be in the 60,000 people per person range at that level. But they aren't the same people. We're seeing more of the same people over and over now. But traditionally, we have assisted people who have come once or twice, or maybe for a month of assistance, and then they don't need us anymore and they're able to move on. And that's the real excitement for us, is when we do, for example, a food drive, and we have people come up to us and they say, here's $20 for your food drive. I want to pay for the next person, because last summer we were in a car wreck, and if it hadn't been for the food bank, we wouldn't have been able to eat. But they think about it and they give back. Yes, sir.
Another question. Can you break down where you receive your money?
We are pretty much, the question was, where do we get our money? I put my hand out and we beg. It's pretty much it. The majority of our money is from donations and grants that we can try to access. We don't get a lot of state funding or anything like that. We do have access to those federal programs that are providing money to support farmers. So if we get the money, we can go buy the produce and support the farmer. But that's really just, from our perspective, it's just getting us food. It's not giving us any money to be able to expand our outreach or to do other things, because it's basically a wash. Yes, ma'am.
Would you rather have money donated rather than these canned foods that are on sale for $10 for $10? People feel good that they're giving to the food bank when they bought stuff that they wouldn't eat themselves. But where is it they just maybe even a small donation would do more good?
The question is a dollar better than a certain number of canned goods? Dollars, money is king. We can buy product from national vendors at prices that are below grocery store prices, below the wholesale store prices, before the Sam's and the Costco's. We can get prices below their prices because we have access to national vendors that we can buy through. Feeding America, which is the National Food Bank Organization, affords us the opportunity to access those vendors at levels as the National Food Bank network, to be able to get those prices and get unbelievable amounts of product for much less. In addition, we also have that bulk packaging machine that if you buy a bag of beans or a bag of rice, we can produce it even cheaper than you can buy it. Yes, sir.
Food bank is, of course, doing a great job right now, too. I was wondering how many people would be on the mailing list for the food bank, and where do you get those lists? And then another question is the Second Harvest group still alive, or y'all do much with them?
Okay, the first question was about our direct mail and our success with that. Yeah, we do a lot of direct mail. And when I started at the food bank, we had a mailing list of about 10,000 people. And I hate to say this, but many of those people were deceased. So when I got to the food bank, the first thing I asked is, well, okay, I give here, I give here, why are you not asking me? And that's when we looked to a direct mail provider to be able to give us access to names that we weren't asking. So we've taken full advantage of that. We have a tremendous direct mail program. And we very rarely buy lists. We use our access, and when people come to our website, for example, and look for stuff, or when people may give a donation, or when we may make a speech, they may communicate with us, those are the people we add to our list. That's our focus because they've got interest in it. So it's much more logical. We do acquisitions, which are just the broad-based mailings and those types of things, but those aren't as successful as they used to be because not a lot of people, to be honest, are using the U.S. mail like they used to, other than to take it, look at it, and throw it away. So our direct mail access is changing to more of an online access and online appeals to be able to make those connections. And one of the things I always advertise with, if you want to make a donation to the food bank, just go to our website, you use your credit card, and you can give back while you're getting points. Win-win. You get the points, we get to feed people. And your other question, John?
Do y'all cooperate with or do much with Second Harvest? Is it still in operation?
Are you talking about Second Harvest Food Bank out of New Orleans? Question was, do we do much with Second Harvest Food Bank in New Orleans? We have a state association of food banks that we all work together. It's called Feeding Louisiana, just like Feeding America is the national organization. So we all come together and we try to work together to maximize our access to statewide grants, statewide fundraising opportunities. So we work very closely with the other food banks in the state. We work Shreveport, Monroe, Alexandria, and then New Orleans, which covers the coastline. That's who we are. Those are the 5 Feeding America food banks in the state. And that's our focus, is to feed people and to make sure we're doing our best job feeding people in all 64 parishes. Mhm.
Another question I have about food being donated. Folks say, bring some food to the food bank and come to our park. Is how this food is stored. Because I have seen instances where food collected for the food bank is stored outside in Louisiana. And I have safety concerns about that, and in fact I've written letters about that. But how do you monitor that?
Well, canned goods are generally safe because I don't know if you know it, but most warehouses for food are not climate controlled. So in a climate controlled warehouse is protected as long as it's not out in the sun being beaten upon by the sun for an extended period. It should still be good. It will reduce the life past a best buy date because the quality won't be as good for as long, but it's still good product. And the expiration dates, to be honest with you, it's still good after expiration dates, but you have to really watch that because of the problems that canned goods could have with botulism and other things. And we do significant inspections of all the canned goods. It would begin to show any real degradation in expansion of the can or the product that potentially even exploding. So we really monitor the quality and safetiness of food. Cans that are dented, for example, they're monitored to what we can accept and what we cannot accept. But with aluminum cans now, it gives us a lot of flexibility to accept more because they're showing more dents, but those dents are not as dramatic as they would be with the old tin cans where it would break the seal, etc. Yes, sir.
Is the reason you don't get any federal or state or parish funding because you have not solved that? Is there a reason this great big empire of money, pot of money, you don't pursue?
Well, we do get some funds from the federal government to reimburse us for the cost of distributing food of their programs. For example, the Emergency Food Assistance Program. We get some administrative costs, but it generally does not cover the full cost of our taking that product in, storing it in our warehouse, and then distributing it. So it's a bit of an offset, but we're still not covering the full cost. The federal programs, there are not earmarks anymore. Earmarks have gone away. So from a federal perspective, it's just grant opportunities, and those are very competitive. And we're competing against, food banks all across the country. When you start talking about Greater Boston, Houston, Chicago Food Depository, San Antonio, you're talking about major food banks that are significantly larger than we are and have significant more grant writers and resources to be able to pursue those kind of things. And they have significant more services because they have significant more funding. One of the big problems for us is to try to be the best we can possibly be, but we don't have those great funding sources. We don't have HEB doing major funding like they do in Texas. We don't have state programs providing major funding like they do in Ohio and other states, where they're giving them millions of dollars to acquire food from within the state to be able to distribute within the state. And that's part of the challenge is, when you talk about limited budgets and limited focus, that's our big issue, is to try to raise the awareness to a level where people will actually care and will actually put their money where their mouth is when they talk about health and care, health and well-being of the citizens.
Doesn't that sound like an opportunity?
It is, and we pursue it constantly, but it's sort of like talking to other people in town with, in the medical arena especially, with Pennington and other places where we hear, LSU, they're trying to get grants from other places, but they tend to go to the usual suspects, as they called it, where they go to the same places with the same funding that the grant funders are comfortable with and used to going to. So it's a challenge for all of us. Pennington, us, LSU Health Sciences, the whole group of us are all struggling to try to find ways to get into those dollars. We have great foundations in the Baton Rouge area that do a tremendous amount to support us. The Huey and Angelica Wilson Foundation, Baton Rouge Area Foundation, Blue Cross Foundation. They're tremendous support, but there's only so much money and there's so many challenges for us to face.
Do you have a director of
The question was, do we have a director of development? Yes, we have a director of development. We have a development staff that focuses on this constantly. One aspect of that is food procurement, trying to work with all the food drives. But the bigger piece is we have a staff of 4 that are totally focused on raising money and doing as much as we possibly can to be able to feed more people.
With the holidays coming up, what is, as of today with Thanksgiving 10, 11 days out, what is an immediate need that you would need in the next week and the next month?
Well, money. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. We need money, and that's because that's how we keep the lights on through those off months. But there are several things going on. We've got zoo lights going on with the Baton Rouge Zoo right now, where if you donate a canned good, you can get half price entry. We'll be doing the red bags again with Coca-Cola through the Associated Grocery Stores, where you can buy a bag and that food will be donated, be available for a family to have a holiday meal. And we'll be doing that through the end of the year. So there are lots of opportunities. The biggest way is fund us. Help us raise the money we need to be able to do what we need to do, because that's the challenge with us having to buy so much more food.
I couldn't hear everything you said, but are you affiliated with, are you a United Way agency?
We do receive some funding from United Way, but the way they've changed their structure, it's a lot different. And we've traditionally been a United Way agency, just not to the levels that we have been in the past. It's much smaller and it's much more programmatically focused. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk more about any estimates or more preparations you have for this holiday season?
Well, the big thing for us is we've done some things like instead of turkeys, everybody likes to give turkeys during the holidays. We're not doing turkeys. We decided that we could do a lot more by giving out hens, chickens, because we can distribute more chickens to get to more households than us spending all our money on turkeys, and they're less expensive per pound. So we can get a lot more coverage and have a lot more impact into a larger number of households by avoiding the 10 to 12 pound turkey, especially when we look at the average household that we service, it's 2 to 2.2 people. So if you give them a 10 to 12 pound turkey, it's not, it's the potential of it going to waste is there. So what we try to focus on, meeting the need where it is and providing as much food as we can to as many people as possible. And that's why we made a significant change in a lot of the things we do, a lot of our focus. We'd love to be able to give turkeys, but we want to make sure it's the best use of the donor dollar, and it has the best impact from the standpoint of we don't see a lot of spoilage or wastage by the individuals we're trying to assist. Yes, sir.
Have you looked into these changes that RFK Jr. is thinking about? I'm not familiar with all of them, but it's apparently pretty broad in terms of the contents of the food. And I'm glad to hear about the things that you have been doing.
Well, anything they can do to improve nutritional quality, and it's like the old joke about the old days when ketchup was considered a vegetable. Anything we can do to get to the days now where it's really focused on nutrition and taking things like dyes out make absolute sense when you start looking at the impacts of that. But we need to do things as a nation to be healthier, and that's our big focus in what we're trying to do, is to provide more fresh produce, more fresh protein, more opportunities for education so that we are helping people make the best decision for their health going forward.
It's 1 o'clock. We're about to lose the room. Take one more question if anybody has one.
Thank you.
The church joined us next week. We're scheduled to have a mayoral runoff forum between Sid Edwards and Chairperson Rouge. So come back. It'll be